Welcome to Leaving Nothing to Chance, your go-to podcast where we bring you insights from some of the most influential voices in small business and personal development. Each week, we dive deep into conversations with top thought leaders, authors, and business moguls from around the world, sharing their secrets to success and strategies for growth. Tune in for exclusive content that will inspire, motivate, and equip you to take your journey to the next level. This is Leaving Nothing to Chance.
Welcome, everybody, to another Leaving Nothing to Chance podcast. My name is John Solleder, if I don't know you, and I have the lovely, talented, multi-skilled Kris Ashley with us today. Kris, how are you?
Wow, welcome. Thank you for that amazing introduction. You're making me feel so welcomed, and I'm great. I'm so happy to be here with you.
I'm so happy that you're here. I'm a big fan of your show. As I told you, it's a Saturday as we record this, folks, because we do pre-record as most. And I was off, as I am most Saturday mornings, to my little bench press club that we have here in McKinney, Texas. And I was listening to Kris going and coming back home. And she's got a great show that she's going to tell you about. But let me tell you a little bit about Kris, and then Kris, feel free to add. You're a coach, you're an author, you are a trauma recovery, somebody who's recovered from serious trauma. You've got an expertise in personal development. You've got a background in science, spirituality. You've written a book. You're a podcaster. You're a new mom. What have we missed?
I've got a TV show too, but I think you've covered it. Human being, I don't know.
Thanks so much for being here, Kris. So let's just start at the top. Let's talk about the trauma, because some of our listeners, hopefully nobody's experiencing trauma as we speak, but unfortunately that's not realistic. I'm sure some of you are, and some of you have, and some of you will, because realistically, of the 100 billion people who've been on the planet over the last several thousand years, we all go through something at some point in our lives. How do we surpass it, Kris? That would be my first question.
Yeah, would it be helpful if I shared my story to get started, and then within that, I can show you how I surpassed it, and maybe that can help someone out. When I was 12, I was sexually abused by a family member, and that went on for 4 years. And I had this really big, tight-knit, extended Italian family. Like, if you've ever seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding, we were the Italian version of that. And when my extended family found out what happened, many of them disowned me. I was getting letters and phone calls from people who had been like second mothers to me, telling me they didn't love me anymore and I wasn't their family anymore. And as you can imagine, this left me with a lot of low vibration emotions like anger and guilt and shame that as a young adolescent, I didn't know how to cope with. Most adults don't know how to cope with those types of emotions. And I was getting in trouble in school. I was self-harming. I was doing drugs. I was in a really bad place. And my world totally changed when someone handed me a book in 2002. And what this book did is it showed me that there was another way of thinking about reality, another way of being and moving through life. And I remember flipping the pages and for the first time in my life thinking like, wow, this feels like truth. And I felt like a sleeper agent, right? Something inside of me just woke up. And when I finished that book, I started reaching for more, and I just became insatiable. I was devouring every metaphysical, spiritual, new age, personal development book I could get my hands on. And I started going to retreats and seminars. I found teachers to study under, like any healing modality I learned about, I tried. And I thought I was just like uncovering these like secrets of the universe that no one knew about, but I was also doing the hard inner work. And my life totally started to change. My attitude about it, I was manifesting things into my life, like I was much happier. But the other part of my story is that as I started to change my mind and get better, my mother started to get worse because her family had been ripped down the seams and she didn't have these books and healing modalities and teachers that I did. And it started to manifest as physical illness for her. She got diagnosed with cancer. She got diagnosed with all these really weird afflictions that her doctors had never even heard of. And so they did what they do. They gave her pills. Then they gave her pills for the side effects of those pills. And they're just throwing anything at the wall, hoping something would stick. And at the height of it, she was on a fentanyl patch. She was on Dilaudid, which is a pretty intense narcotic. She was on about 10 other pills, and she would fall down all the time. She would nod off at the dinner table. She slept for all but a few hours of daylight. There was a few times where we had these like amazing heart to hearts, and I finally got to tell her like all the things I wanted to, and she heard them the way I wanted her to. And then the next day she just had no memory of the conversation. And that lasted almost 15 years. So I had this compounded guilt that I had destroyed my family and broken my mother. But I believe everything happens for a reason. And I realized that my mother was my biggest teacher because every step I watched her take deeper into depression and illness and victimization, I climbed in the other direction out of that dark tunnel because I had proof firsthand right in front of me what happens to a human body and spirit when they make those choices, because I really do think it's a choice. And then I saw what was happening to my own life and body and spirit as I was changing my mind about the nature of reality and life and consciousness and all these things. And I made a promise to myself that I would do everything I could to heal physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and I would always prioritize my health. And it's a promise I've kept. Just this is a big thing I like to say, like just because I've done a lot of healing from that doesn't mean like life stops happening or you stop learning, right? I'm still reading like a book a week. I'm still studying under everyone I can. I go to take all the courses I can because the learning never stops. But eventually, after 2 decades of all this self-study and studying under other teachers, I wanted to give back. So I took a life coach training with the amazing Mary Morrissey. I'm sure you've heard of her. We were talking in the green room. We know a lot of the same people, same world. And I wrote my book and started the podcast and all these things. So to circle back to your question, which I believe, I know I've lost it exactly, but I think it was like, how does someone start to move through that? Is that right?
Exactly. And you were so young, 12, to recognize what happened and not accept, somebody else's version of it, to say, no, this happened and I need to move past it and start to do the work to move past it in my life. Wow, what an adult decision. That's
Well,
such
I was about 17 when I made that decision, but yeah. But yeah. Yeah, I'm a big believer in we choose the things that we're going to go through before we incarnate, and it's because that those things ready the soil, plant the seeds for us to grow and learn the lessons we're supposed to. And I think I needed to go through that to wake up a little bit and put me on the path that I'm meant to go on. I don't think there's any coincidences. But as far as if you're going through it, if you're in the middle of that storm, I think the first thing for me was knowledge that like it's not going to be like this forever, and that if we change the way we look at things, new opportunities open up, because we all, like you said, we all have a story. We all have had either trauma or something that causes us a lot of emotional stress. And things happen in life that challenge us, right? But inside every adversity, every heartbreak, every tragedy, there's a hidden Easter egg. And if you can find it, tremendous healing, leveling up, and growth takes place. And this is not to say it happens overnight, but if we can learn from everything and grow from everything, it makes everything have happened for a reason. And I think the other really important thing is to feel your way through it, right? Emotions are energy in motion, and that shit becomes trapped in your body. I hope I could swear on your show. So in order to release all that, you have to allow yourself to feel.
So if somebody's going through trauma right now, let's hope that they're not. Fortunately, I do have a lot of listeners, so I'm sure there's somebody out there that is in that place right now, whether it's a sexual trauma, whether it's a marital trauma, whether it's a kid trauma, whether it's, I mean, there's so many different ones, unfortunately. What would be the first couple of steps in terms of recognizing and maybe stepping back and saying, hey, I'm going through this thing. Now, what the heck can I do to try to make the situation better?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to try and regulate your nervous system a little bit, right? To take a step back and like even if you spend 15 minutes a day doing something that brings you down into a parasympathetic state, right, which is the opposite of fight or flight, whether that's just deep breathing or taking a walk or journaling or listening to music or doing yoga or whatever it is that you do. I know like you and I are both really into movement, like whatever it is you need to do to just slow your breathing down and like step outside of that for a moment. Like even 15 minutes a day will combat being in that like high stress, high cortisol state all day. And really just being like, what can I, like taking a step out of it, putting your future self into that place where you're on the other side of the storm, right? Because you're in it right now, but there's going to be a version of you that's on the other side of it. And try and think, what would that future version of me like want to know? What would they want to tell me? What would they have learned from this? What would they have gained from it? And also, if you're in a situation that's dangerous, get yourself out of that situation, right? This isn't to like say like you should just be enduring abuse or anything like that. It's hard to like blanket trauma, but I think taking care of yourself emotionally, feeling everything you need to feel, and also knowing that like you create your reality, right? And that's not to blame any victims, right? Like the things that happen to you aren't your fault, but your healing is your responsibility. And I'm a big fan of journaling and manifesting. What do you want? Start to create the life that you want. Get that vision, that North Star in your mind. And it's hard when you're just in this constant state of survival. But unless you put yourself in that future state and start to take action steps towards it, things aren't going to change.
Wow, no, great advice. And I love the journaling thing too, because there is that thing, right? It's kind of like when you make a goal. You can make a goal. I can say to you right now, I want to do X, Y, Z, but all of a sudden I write it down, and there's that connection between the paper and the brain somehow. And
Yeah.
that's such sage advice that you just gave there, Kris. That hey, see your future self, see that situation in the rear view mirror. Everybody's dealing with different things. I've had two people this week that came to me that with cancer diagnoses, and I gave them the same advice. It's look, you're going to get past this, but how are you going to get past it? What steps are you going to take to get past it? It's not just going to happen because you wish it away. It's a serious situation, and all these things are. But one other thought.
Can I just say one other thing? Sorry, you just made me think of this. That's so important, especially when you're dealing with illness. Like, notice your thoughts. Your thoughts are so powerful. The words that you speak, when you write, when you think, when you speak, are so powerful. And a lot of times, and I'm saying this from firsthand experience watching my mother, a lot of times with illness, it becomes people's identity. And they don't do this on purpose, but if you have this mantra that's saying, I'm so sick, or just putting yourself in this kind of victim state, you are reinforcing that, right? It's never say my cancer or my illness, right? You don't want to like claim that. So be really careful with the language you use and the thoughts. You have to start to notice the thoughts you're thinking, because the thoughts you're thinking create emotions, and emotions are put you on a certain frequency, and you're going to attract more of that into your life. The way that you start to manifest anything or move towards your dreams or your goals, and if you're not into the woo side, like this is science, this is neuroscience, right? Your reticular activating system is literally the part of your brain that tunes into like your goals, like what you want to focus on. You have to match your thoughts to that new life, right? To that new frequency. So if you catch yourself in this constant state of talking about how this illness is yours and how you're so sick, like you're just reinforcing that state.
I love that. What you just said there is so true. Bruce Lee had a great statement that I read in a book on a guy I interviewed a few months ago. And he said, don't even tell yourself for a second that you can't do something, right? And because your brain's really smart, but your brain also so smart that it accepts, to your point, I'm sick. Your brain's going to think that you're sick all the time. If you say, hey, you know what? I have a strong body. I'm going to recover. I'm going to beat this. If you have that attitude, we see people all the time that do these amazing things, and then you find out, oh, they should have been dead 10 years ago. And you're like, wow, they're walking around and they just ran the Boston Marathon in 3 hours, or some other crazy athletic feat, or whatever it happens to be. So I love what you're talking about. So let's go one step deeper on that. Okay. The person who's there, because right now you're healthy, I'm healthy. Thank the good Lord, we're both in good health, right? So it's easy for us to do that, but we both have been in other situations in our life, what you just described. I've been in something similar. It shows about your story today, though. So let's take that person right now. Let's take one of those two people this week that called me with cancer diagnoses, right? And by the way, both of them are early and they'll beat it. They both have tremendous attitudes. But to that point, how do they kick their own butt to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to quote Bruce Springsteen here. I'm going to spit in the face of these badlands, or this bad diagnosis, or this bad situation. How do I tell it? Now, you're not beating me. Okay. How do they do that in the moment when they get that bad news from the doc, or they get that bad news in their marriage, or they get that bad news about maybe a loved one's health situation? How do they pull themselves up mentally because it is a mental game, as we both know, to get themselves in that winning thought process against whatever that trauma is?
I love that question so much. And for me, it's knowledge. So knowing that you live in an intelligent universe. And if you're not into the woo-woo side, quantum physics backs this up, right? Quantum physics tells us that within the universe exists an infinite number of overlapping possibilities. And it's these other versions of reality that are just waiting there in a state of rest, waiting for you to choose them. And we live in such an exciting time where science is backing up what spirituality and mysticism has been saying for eons. You really can create the reality you want. Every possible future state exists out there in rest, right? Everything you can imagine and everything you can't. So knowing that, and knowing that your thoughts create your reality and you get to choose the future that you want, it completely puts the power back into your own hands, right? So for me, what would help me and what has helped me is studying all that, right? Reading about quantum physics, going to the Joe Dispenza workshops and finding those meditations online, because it's so easy to blame outside events and other people and illness or the government or whatever for your suffering. But all that does is allow you to stay in your comfort zone of feeling small, avoid feeling guilty, allow you to be the victim, be the martyr, get pity, but it doesn't allow you to take accountability and responsibility for your life, right? It doesn't allow true healing. Yeah, for me, it's knowing that we live in this incredible place where miracles happen every day and science backs it up. So it really is a choice and it really is in your hands. And also knowing that everything is for a reason so that you can learn and level up and grow.
Do you believe that bad things happen to good people sometimes? For example, there's a statement that was made by one of the great British authors, and his name's going to escape me, and I'm embarrassed because I was a literature major in college. But the guy who wrote Narnia.
Oh, no, I'm so bad with authors' names, but yeah, I know who you're talking about.
But he had a great statement. Okay, there was a movie called Shadowlands that Anthony Hopkins portrayed him in. And anyway, his statement was that pain is God's way of rousing a sleeping world, something to that effect. I may not have it verbatim, but do you think sometimes that God or the universe or whatever somebody believes, I personally believe in God, whatever somebody believes, that they're entitled to their belief system, but in other words, whatever created us, that sometimes they knock us on the head and say, hey, I'm going to throw a challenge at you because you can handle this. You don't know that you can handle it, but I'm going to help you to handle it. And you're going to learn the life skills that you can then turn around, like you're doing, Kris, in your life. And I admire you so much for doing this, to help other people to overcome whatever their situation is.
100%. And that's kind of what I was saying earlier, where my personal belief is like we have these big life events that are predetermined that will give us the opportunity to grow. But you always have a choice, right? We have free will. So you can use challenges to go more unconscious, to become bitter, to become resentful, to become a victim, to blame other people. Or you can use those to kind of level up and grow and learn and become more awakened and forgive and become better. Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that the universe or God or whatever you believe in, if you're not on the path you're meant to go on and you're not moving, will shake you up. It'll start small, like tapping you on the shoulder. And then if you're not listening, it's going to take you by the shoulders and shake you. So that's why, and I'm sure as someone who values movement as much as I do hard things, right? Put yourself outside of your comfort zone, push yourself so that you don't get stuck to that point where the universe or God has to step in and do it for you.
Listen to David Goggins sometimes early in the morning.
He's awesome. Yeah, no, he's on another level, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that level is, but yeah, he is at another level. Sometimes that's what I do. I get up early and I'm heading to the gym at 5:30 in the morning, and I'm a senior citizen, and I'm thinking, I don't have to be up. My first meeting is not till 9 o'clock. Why am I up at 5:30? I listen to Goggins for about 2 minutes, and it's that's why I'm up. Let's go. Let's cut all the BS and let's do it. So
Yep.
let's stay on personal development for a couple of minutes here.
Yeah.
Okay, early on, so you're 12 when this horrible situation occurs. You're 17 when you recognize it. You also recognize the mirror image of that the other way with what your mom's situation is. And you had to obviously get exposed to some personal development. Was it a book? Was it books? Was it podcast didn't really exist then? Was it a tape series? Where did you get that first thing where, hey, you know what? There's people out here who have walked similar steps, maybe not the same, but similar, and they use these particular tools to get past whatever their trauma was. Was there something specific, or some things for that matter specific?
So it's really funny. Like I went deeper into the spirituality side of it, and then the personal development kind of came. Like I told you before, it was a book that changed my life. It's on my bookshelf behind me, but kind of want to run over and grab it. But it's a book called The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life. And it's actually two books. Chapter like 1 through 9 or something is in book 1, and 10 through 50. It's something like that. The numbers aren't right. But and this book's not for everyone. I don't know that your listeners would necessarily resonate with it, but what it did for me is it gave me a lot of breadcrumbs to follow. From that book, I learned about, I told you it changed my way of viewing reality, right? So I learned about sacred geometry. I learned about Zecharia Sitchin's like ancient astronaut theory from there. I learned about Greg Braden's God Code work from there. I learned about ancient Egyptian mystery schools. I learned about Atlantis and Lemuria and like all these things that just opened my mind to, hey, there's other possibilities, right? There's other ways of viewing reality and the existence of nature and human history and all these things. And I followed every breadcrumb, like every single breadcrumb. And I don't know, like I started reading like Greg Braden's work. And then and then from one book, I would start listening to a documentary or a teacher. And then I would learn about a new one from there. And I got like really into Dolores Cannon and I don't know. And then from there, it went more into the Four Agreements. And then maybe from there, it went more into personal development. So it's not like, it's funny. I was on a show the other day and I was talking about this and the host was like, wow, most people go for Mel Robbins or something first, right? They're like, you went off the deep end. But it's just, I think it just speaks to, I was really seeking and that's what I needed at the time. And then from there, it was like my mindset shifted to all these possibilities. And then I found the personal development stuff later. And then I went to Tony Robbins and Mary Morrissey and all of that. But I'd already had this foundation of I can create my own reality, right? That I can change my perspective. So then the personal development stuff just kind of like fit in really nicely. So I think I did it more backwards than a lot of people do.
You got there, but the Four Agreements alone, we could do a show on.
Oh, so good.
We're talking. It's funny. It's like people talk about Think and Grow Rich all the time. They don't know that there was a book prior to that, okay, on the science of getting rich by a guy named Waddles way back.
Yep.
All of this stuff, everybody you just mentioned, from Tony, Les Brown, Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, all of the grandfathers, if you will, of self-development, way back, Charlie Tremendous Jones, whose daughter Tracy's a good friend of mine in Pennsylvania. All of those people, they had somebody before them, and
Yeah.
what you just some of the stuff you mentioned, I'm familiar with, some I'm not, and I will become, but it's great that it's out there. And I think there's a message there, and I'd love your response to this, Kris. There's a message out there if you're hurting, that people have walked similar paths.
Yeah.
First, don't feel like you're alone. There are all of these answers. You found them in those writings. You found that peace that helped you to move on past a horrific situation to create a wonderful life now where you're a mom, you're an author, you're a podcaster, you're a TV personality, you're a celebrity. You got a great life. But at 17, it wasn't there. You had to do the work, but the work was there that you could find to help you move past that situation.
So well said. And you and I were talking in the green room before we pressed record about what we love about podcasting. And that's something else I love about it is I have all these amazing people on my show. You're going to come on my show where I only plan one question. And it's the first one is, what is your origin story? And every single person on there shares their own trauma, their own challenges that they went through and they overcame. And now they're doing what they do so that they can help other people not suffer for decades like they did. And I think what you said is so important too. Like it's so easy to feel alone and isolated when you're going through something, but we all go through something, right? It's part of this human experience and you get to decide what you do with that.
And it's funny, and just a side note, because this just shows about Kris, not about me, but 17 is where I had my kind of wake up call. double spinal cord surgery. I was 80%
Wow.
paralyzed. And my father, who was a recovering alcoholic, gave me the book, The Power of Positive Thinking by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. I had just turned, I was 5 days past my 17th birthday. So about the same age you were, where it was like, hey, wait a minute. Wow, here's all of this knowledge that this man's writing about. And then, of course, As a Man Thinketh was the next thing I ever read by James Allen. And it was like, we attract what we are, not what we want to be. And it was like all of these ideas that I didn't know existed, that all of a sudden, when you open your mind and your heart to them, they're all out there. But let's go from there. I want to talk about your book, because your book can help people, and tell them about your book, the title, and where they can get it, and all of the offshoots of writing a book.
Yeah, thanks for that. My book is called Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. I'm so grateful. I still can't believe it. I got such great endorsements from 3 people from The Secret: Michael Beckwith, Marcy Shimoff, Bob Doyle, John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, endorsed it, Anita Morjani, who wrote Dying to Be Me. So just very grateful for them. So it's in paperback, ebook, audiobook, anywhere you get your books. And it's about what we've been talking about today, right? That everything that happens to you, you get to look at it from any perspective you want to, right? So it delves into belief systems that develop when we're kids and in that theta brainwave state, right? From the opinions of the adults that we grew up around, and cultural conditioning and all these things. And the belief systems create the way we think, which creates our emotions, which creates our reality. So there's a big section on relationships, on healing, on forgiveness, on feeling your repressed emotions, what to do when you're in the middle of that storm, how to manifest the life of your dreams. I bring in science and spirituality because that's my jam. And yeah, a lot of personal stories woven in there too.
I can't wait to read it, and we'll talk
Yeah, I'll
about
send you a copy.
another show that does nothing but authors. So I'll tell you about that afterwards.
Oh, cool.
Tell us about your TV show.
Yeah, so the TV show is called Beyond Reality. And so the podcast is Change Your Mind with Kris Ashley. You know, that's kind of my brand, because the book is Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. The podcast focuses on personal development, spirituality, and science. The TV show gets more into the metaphysics, like the side, because I love that. I love to explore that. So I've had amazing people on. I've had people who have survived NDEs. I've had Dr. Eben Alexander, who I think he was on New York Times bestseller list for 90 weeks or something crazy. Dr. Raymond Moody, who coined the term near-death experience. Paul Perry, who co-wrote 16 books on NDEs. I have people who are energy healers. I just had Dr. Bradley Nelson on, who created the emotion code and body code. All kinds of natural healers, remote viewers, people who remember past lives. I've had this amazing guy named Jim on, this is so cool. His job is, there's all these kids who remember their past lives, and he actually tracks down the families of the person that they used to be, and like proves everything. So it's so much fun to explore that side of it. I just had the director from the Michael Newton Institute. I don't know if you've ever read Michael Newton's Journey of Souls. He does past life regression hypnosis. He's passed away. Amazing book. So just really fun to explore that side of reality, because I think it all goes together, and the book combines all of it, but I've separated it in my different shows, and I'm just having so much fun talking to incredible people.
Yeah, you mentioned near-death experiences. My father was a guy that died. He was clinically dead in a hospital. And there was a doctor there who was not normally, this is funny, right? I was the universe, quote unquote, work, right? This doctor was never at that hospital before. He happened to be there and said, let me look at that guy. He was there for another patient. And he rubbed my father's heart, believe it or not, brought him back to life. My father went through crazy stuff. By the way, people don't smoke, because that's how he got there at the age of 56. But long story short, he was dead. He was out of body, had the out of body experience. Saw a man on the beach who said, we're not ready for you, Fred. And he came back in 5.5 years. He helped lots of guys and women stop drinking. And that was his calling. And it took him to that. It took that horrific situation to bring him into the light, where he said, hey, I'm going to help other people. And so I got to hear, where do I find that show, by the way?
It's on New Reality TV, which is an independent TV network that launched recently, all about metaphysics and uplifting content and natural health. It's going to have an app on smart TVs, be on Roku, Amazon Fire Stick, a couple other places.
I got to check that. New Reality TV. Great.
Yeah.
There's a plug for New Reality TV.
There you go, Will and Karen.
So let's talk a little bit about coaching. okay? Because you're a coach, you help a lot of people. So I'm going to ask you a kind of a succession of questions here, okay? Some of them might be one-word answers, some of them might be multi-paragraphs, okay?
Okay.
First of all, what habits should people establish to become successful?
To become successful. I love that. Okay. So first of all, and I touched on this before, like so many people don't even know what they want, whether it's for their business or in their personal life. So I think the number one thing is getting really clear on your vision, like having that North Star. This is an exercise I walk people through that I love doing, but I have people divide their life into 7 categories, rate each one on a scale of 1 to 10, and then write down what would make each category a 10. And it helps people get really clear on their vision. It's just a fun thing to do for listeners. And then the next step is taking action. I'm a big believer in the law of attraction. I'm sure you figured that out if you're listening. And I love books and movies like The Secret that brought the law of attraction to the masses. But I think just online at least, I see a lot of people like that teach the law of attraction missing some key points because the universe isn't this genie in a bottle where you get to just tell it what you want and sit back, kick your feet up and let it drop in your lap, right? There's steps you need to take. So the next one is to take action, right? Because action inspires something in the universe, right? You start to take steps and it meets you where you're at and it whooshes you further and farther faster than you could possibly imagine. And it doesn't even have to be a big step on your part, right? Never underestimate the power of a small step. From one small step, the right people might appear on your path to help you. You might heal what needs to be healed. It might put you in the position to achieve your dreams. And there's always something you can do right now with the tools you have, right? You're never so stuck in one place. There's nowhere you can go and nothing you can do. And I think it was Bob Proctor that said, do something you have with the tools now, and then as you go, new tools would become available to you. So it's getting outside of your comfort zone. It's taking those steps towards your dreams. And it's also about just like letting go of the how, right? Or just having that destination in mind, but being flexible with the route, right? Because oftentimes things happen in the way that you couldn't even imagine, right? Like things you thought were impossible become possible. Like I just was on stage this past week talking about this from a leadership point of view with amazing people like Dean Graziosi. And like I said, like leaders find like they stay connected to the destination. So if something isn't working, they're not like grinding against it. They evolve, they adapt, they use each experience as a stepping stone, right? They stay open to the possibilities. The universe knows how to bring us from A to Z very quickly. Because humans, we overcomplicate it. We're like, okay, I have to make $100,000 this year to make $200,000 next year. But the universe can jump you very quickly. And once you get clear on your vision, you take steps towards it, you embody the person you want to be. We talked about that a little bit too. Like, how would that future version of you dress? How would they talk? Who would they spend their time with? Where would they spend their time? What kind of conversations would they have? And then, like, step into that future version, take action, release the how, and success is inevitable. If you do those steps, success is inevitable. And then if you're listening and you're like, look, I'm doing all those things and it hasn't happened yet, there's just one key ingredient that you're missing, and that is to just keep going and not give up, right? Because 90% of people don't achieve their goals, and it's for one of 2 reasons. One, the first sign of adversity or challenge or something not going the way they plan, they give up. And 2, they're so fearful to get started that they don't even begin in the first place. So if you have your vision, you're taking steps towards it, you're embodying your future success and that person you want to be, and you're releasing the how and staying focused on the destination, it's going to happen for you.
Great answer. So let's flip the coin on that. Okay. What habits should they break?
And we talked about this already too, but to frame it this way, the negative self-talk, right? Notice what you're saying. Are you saying, oh, this always happens? Every bad things always happen to me. I never reach my goals, or like I'm going to be famous one day. It's okay. When are you going to be it? It's always out there in the future if you're always saying I'm going to be. So I think that's the biggest thing. And then yeah, like habits that don't serve you. Are you spending hours a day scrolling social media? Are you surrounding yourself with people that are draining you and are negative and getting sucked into their drama? Are you If you want to lose weight, are you sitting on the couch all day eating junk food? Like just being like honest with yourself about your habits, I think is really life changing.
I love that because self honesty is the hardest thing in everything. It kind of leads me to my next question. And it's really more of a business question, but it applies to other things as well. And that's how to change the obvious. So let me give you some context on that, Kris. Is when I was living up in Ontario, Canada, the gym I trained at, I loved this gym. I was telling you off camera, I love it was my kind of gym and all the stuff that a regular gym just doesn't have. Okay. But it wasn't for everybody. And the owner said to me one day, his name was Tom, he said, do me a favor, John, come in tomorrow and put your business hat on. You're a business guy, you've written books and all this other stuff you do. Like, just come in tomorrow and tell me what's wrong with this place. And immediately I didn't see anything wrong. I thought it was great. But then I saw like a small thing, like the fact that the lockers were oxidized from the salt that people would get on their shoes and put their work boots in a locker, put their sneakers on train, and then go back and change during the inclement weather up there that they have for 5 or 6 months a year. As one example, where a man might not want to bring a good suit that he's going to work in afterwards, which means maybe he doesn't come and train, so maybe he cancels his membership. A woman, likewise, probably wouldn't want her work clothes in there because you don't want that stuff on your good clothes, obviously. And that was one minor change. There are a couple other things. So, along those lines, whether it's business or personal, okay, how do they change that thing that you or I walk in as a customer to a business, okay? And that could be an online business too, by the way, because we both deal with people online. And one of those things that maybe they don't see, how do they get to see the obvious that maybe even total stranger walks in and sees and says, man, if you put the coffee machine over rather than the middle of the room where people are tripping over it against the wall, you'd have more room. You could put another unit in here and create more revenue, for example. Things like that. How do they see that and be so self-honest with themselves that they make those changes that might be abundantly clear to a total stranger walking into their particular world, so to speak?
Yeah, totally. I have two different answers for you. So the first one is more focused on like online business and personal development because that's what I do. But I also did used to own a yoga studio, so I can do the other one. It kind of goes back to your habits. Like you are your business, right? If you're an entrepreneur and you're working online, you have a service of some kind, you are your business. So write out your day. What are you doing? What are you spending your time on? What can you outsource? Who can you hire to help you? Or even like around your house, like what can you outsource and how many hours can you save by doing that? And then what can you do with that time, right? If there's a way that you can be making more money, but you're spending all your time like doing your laundry, like maybe you can send that out if you can make double that within that hour. Or if you're spending a lot of time scrolling on social media, to go back to that, like how can we replace that? Because your time is your money. For more of the, this goes for anything, and I don't know, it's cheating a little bit because it's not directly what you asked, but I think having a mentor is so important. Having someone who has walked the path ahead of you, whether it's a business coach or a mentor of some kind or a personal coach, and can see around the corners because they've been there. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel that way, right? You get to walk the path that they've done and they can see things from an objective point of view is just, it's priceless. It's so important. I think everyone should have a mentor or a business coach or something like that. And I know you said, how can we personally see it? And I guess like another way, if you have a brick and mortar and you're not trying to do the little cheat answer that I just gave you, like I used to run a yoga studio, go to other studios, see what you like, see what works well, see what doesn't. Put that business hat on when you go to other spaces. Yeah, I hope that helps people.
It does because sometimes that's the hardest thing in business. Like I'll give you one of mine that I shouldn't give. I have this terrible habit of saying okay that I don't hear when I'm interviewing you, and all of a sudden I listen.
Oh, you mean actually saying it. Got it.
I used okay 47 times, and it's like, my God, my listeners must be going nuts hearing the word okay. But I don't know, maybe it's the New Jersey guy in me. It's programmed into me, and it's a habit I'm trying to fix. Another question. The world's changed a little bit. You're a lot younger than I am, but you've still been in the business world for a couple of decades, right? You've seen technology change. How are you using technology for all of your businesses to get your book out, get your podcast out, get your TV show out, get your coaching system out? How are you using it, and how has it changed over the last however many years in your case? And how can people use technology to make it their friend now?
Yeah, I love this answer. Just I'm turning 40 this year, just so you know how old I am. I look like I'm 20, but I'm a little bit older. And my background is actually in marketing, in digital marketing. I use tech a lot, and I've used for my business, I've used things like webinars, I've used things like funnels, lots of social media ads. I've used all of the conventional things, blogs, all the things. Right now, I love AI. I use ChatGPT for everything. And I've learned though that I have to, because I've had hallucinations happen with it. So I've learned to like double check things on Google, but I don't use Google anymore for anything unless it's checking ChatGPT. So I use it in my personal life too. So here's a great way to use it for personal development, and then I could talk about the business side. Remember how I was talking about make a list of everything you want and getting really clear on your vision? I've told my ChatGPT everything I want. And so each night I'm like, tell me the story of my life. And it gives me this beautiful story of a day in my life of my future self, right? Where I've got all these things going on with my family, with my business, with all these things that I want. And it helps me really visualize it because I have that written down in a journal that I read every night too, but this brings it to life with a story, right? So there's such cool things. And actually, I just asked it the other day. Hold on, let me find the actual question because my husband actually saw this online and it was so cool. So if you use ChatGPT often, it gets to know you. And I've done things, and you could totally do this too. I've like uploaded my book into it, the PDF of my book, and I'm like, here's my book, get to know me more. Like, here's my podcast, all these things. So it like really knows me. Okay, so the prompt I gave it the other day, based on all our chats so far, do you notice any blind spots or recurring patterns in my thinking that I might not be consciously aware of yet? And it freaking nailed me. Like, it nailed me so hard. It was like, here, just to be very vulnerable. You're extremely vision driven, but sometimes the gap between your vision and your current results feel frustrating to you. You have very high standards, and that's both your superpower and your challenge. And then it goes into details about each one. You toggle between deep faith and wanting external validation from institutions you admire. Because I'm always like, I'm going to be a New York Times bestseller. You think in terms of fixing when you're already building, like things like that. And it was just like, wow. And then it gave me like little exercises, like mirror work and affirmations I can do each day to like combat that. And I've been doing them. And anyway, there's really cool use cases for ChatGPT for personal development. For business, I use it for everything. Like that's how I get my podcast titles. I'll run email drafts through there, marketing copy, emails, social media posts, ad copy, scripts. I use it for scripts a lot. What else? Gosh, everything. Everything. It's amazing.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
So let's just summarizing everything, Kris. I know we mentioned it earlier, but I always like to say it on the out thing because some people don't remember the beginning of shows. But she mentioned her book. She mentioned this. She mentioned that. So tell everybody where they can reach you, where they can find out about your coaching and everything else about Kris.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. KrisAshley.net is my website. It's probably easiest. If you want to connect online, Change Your Mind with Kris is my handle everywhere: TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Kris is spelled with a K. My book is everywhere you can get your book. It's called Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. And yeah, everything's on my website. So you can find events that I'm doing. You can find shows I've been on. If you want to watch more interviews, you can find coaching, all the information. So yeah, please come say hi, connect with me.
I'm a big fan, Kris. I'm a big fan of your show and your new mom too, on top of everything else, right? What's your son's name?
His name's Jackson.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you like being a mom? That's
Oh my God, it's awesome. He was 8 years in the making. Took 8 years. We went through a lot of infertility, a lot of fertility treatments. So if you're going through that, that's a whole challenge too. But yeah, it's amazing. The amount of love is just so overwhelming. And before him, I had a dog that was like my child. Like I loved this dog. And I thought I was like prepared for the amount of love, and it's just wild. Like the amount of love humans are capable of. And it's so fun. We're having so much fun with him.
phenomenal. And I'm so happy for you and your husband and for Jackson.
Thank you.
parent and some parents that are very, very aware. And I guess, let's see, 15 months. So he's walking already, I can imagine. He's probably keeping you on your toes, huh?
He's running. Yeah. Yeah. Him and the golden doodle run all over the house and they're best friends. And it's so cute.
We were down in Costa Rica, my wife and I, we're about 90% raw vegan. I'm about 90. She's about 50. She's getting there. But we were down for an event 2 weeks ago, and our friends that hosted us, they're a young couple like yourself and your husband, about the same age. And they got a little boy who is now 8 months, and he just started to stand while we were there.
Oh.
And they have a daughter that's 3. But I said to the mom, I said, you're going to have to get a new pair of sneakers. He's in great shape. But she goes, oh, I know. He's already so busy. So those are just fun ages. And mine are grown now. So now let me just warn you, this is what happens when your kids grow up. Then you go back to the dog stage. Now I have 4 dogs.
4 dogs. Wow. What kind of dogs do you have?
Oh, 2 are half Chihuahuas, half Jack Russells. And they are like...
That's energy.
They're like 15-month-olds. They're all over the place. And then we got 2 big dogs that we adopted that are multiple breeds. And we take the dogs nobody wants. We go and it's okay. Who returned a dog? Who doesn't want it? We take the problem dogs.
That's awesome.
We love dogs. But Kris, this has been such a privilege, my friend. I appreciate this, especially on a busy Saturday. And can't wait to get this out and have our listeners listen to it and be blessed by all of the tremendous life that you've led. So continue to be a leader, my friend. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you for the work you're doing in the world. It's really important.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check back weekly for more exciting episodes. And don't miss Ink and Insight every Wednesday, where we celebrate iconic authors and dive into their impactful works.